Hello, everyone. We wanted to welcome you to Enterprise Applications Operations in the Cloud and how they are powered by Cloud360 and Amazon Web Services. I'm Tom Timo, Vice President Emerging Business Accelerator at Cognizant. I'll be the facilitator today. Joining me will be Dr. Paul Rohrig. He's responsible for the Center of Work. He's the AVP for the Center of Work at Cognizant. Also joining me will be Tom Sickle, Senior Manager, Solutions Architecture at Amazon Web Services, and Ramesh Yuganthi, who's the Managing Director of Cloud360 at Cognizant. You can follow us on Twitter at #CloudManagement, and you can find interaction on this discussion there. Some very brief housekeeping items. You can submit your questions there using the #CloudManagement or via the Q&A tool on this application. And a copy of today's presentation will be made available on AWS's SlideShare channel and AWS's YouTube channel. And today's webinar is being recorded. The agenda that we're going to follow today, first Dr. Rohrig is going to talk about the future of work and how it runs the cloud. Then Tom Sickle is going to lead into the cloud transformation and how that's powered by AWS. And then Ramesh is going to walk through Cloud360 for the enterprise. And at the end, we're going to leave some time for questions from the audience. So Paul, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Tom, and thanks everyone for taking the time to spend a little bit of today talking about what we think is a pretty compelling undertaking. In fact, we're quite enthusiastic about how cloud-enabled technologies are really becoming one of the key enabling systems for embracing what we call the future of work. Now that's a pretty broad brush to paint things with, but our take is that work is changing in profoundly different ways, and new systems and new technologies are now being integrated with work at the enterprise level. And we're finding not only Cognizant customers, but also hearing from across the market about how these new technologies are helping decision makers like you create what we're calling a digital enterprise. So we wanted to take just a few minutes to frame up what are we seeing in the market, and then we'll drive that into how is Amazon helping decision makers and technologists make these themes real, and then we'll also show some of the tools and systems that we've developed together with Amazon, Cognizant and Amazon, to help turn things on and manage them better. So let's get started. We think we're entering an important new era in business and technology. Now that's kind of a broad brush as well, but let's look at some of the changes that are hitting decision makers and enterprises, and also talk a little bit about what do we think we can do to embrace some of these shifts. Now, our take is that new technologies are beginning to transform work in a very real, significant way. And what we're calling the digital enterprise is moving from sort of a kind of an academic theory into a real-world reality. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. First of all, this new digital enterprise has as a foundation what we call the SMAC stack. So this is the new IT architecture that's comprised of social computing systems, mobility, advanced analytics for meaning making, cloud-enabled solutions, and taken together, this SMAC stack is really bringing consumer-grade IT to the enterprise. Now, if you've been in IT for anything longer than 6 months, you know we've been talking about this for years and years. But what we think is happening and what we're starting to see is that the interaction costs are continuing to go down. The maturity of these technologies continues to go up, and now it makes a lot more sense for what we call the millennial mindset to drive use of these new technologies into the enterprise. And the implications of that shift are landing right on business and technology decision makers. So it's not as simple as saying consumer IT is coming to the enterprise. What this means is these new consumer-grade technologies are moving into the enterprise, and they're profoundly reshaping work. And what do we mean when we say reshaping work? Our take is that physical value chains are now becoming digitized. So if you think back to some of the physical value chain winners, let's look at a couple examples. You have Borders, Blockbuster, Nokia, AOL, Kodak, and what we've seen in recent months and quarters is that digital value chain winners are beginning to emerge and, in fact, in some cases, replace the physical value chain winners. And although they're from different industries and focus on different value propositions for their customers, one thing is incredibly consistent across these new winners in the digital value chain era is that they're focused on the work. So if you look, for example, at Procter & Gamble, they use social systems, cloud-enabled systems they use to drive new product innovation. And in fact, 50% or so of P&G innovations are now being driven from outside of Procter & Gamble via their Connect and Develop program. So they're using SmackStack technologies to reimagine product innovation, and they're succeeding very, very well, in fact. Netflix, although they've got some current business issues, no one could really argue that they have not transformed the customer experience. So they're using cloud-enabled systems, social systems, analytics, and what they've really done is transform and reimagine the customer experience. So they use algorithms, they use analytics, they use prior behavior, they use cohort activities, and they create a much more rich customer experience. So also, Apple is a great example of supply chain reformation. So they use social systems of engagement, they use analytics, they use cloud-enabled solutions, and they've rethought and reimagined their supply chain process. And in fact, we're talking to banks, credit card providers on how they are even reimagining what's the use of currency and how will money be reimagined. So if you take these together, what you see is some real hard evidence of a massive shift of digital from physical supply chain realities to a new digital value web, if you will. And this is the most recent casualty. Newsweek just ended their print edition, going all digital in 2013. So clearly this is just one more company that has, we think, been a little bit slow to embrace new ideas and new thinking about how SmackStack technologies can help companies embrace the future of work. So what we see overall then is a perfect storm, if you will, of data, new devices, changing demographics in the millennial mindset moving into the enterprise, and a massive amount of economic and political variability globally, and this is driving major shifts in the enterprise. And we are right now, we think very strongly, we are right now at a shift point, and it is at this shift point that significant value is destroyed or created. So it's the implications of the intersection of process work, new technologies, demographics, new economics that are putting decision makers, business technology decision makers at the enterprise at an incredible amount of pressure. And we think we can look at this a couple of ways. One is we're all in trouble, but the other way is this is an amazing opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity to reimagine work. Now, one of the questions that comes up fairly regularly is, won't the cloud save us all? Isn't cloud the solution? And the answer is sort of. But first we have to step back and say, what is the cloud? Now, one of our customers actually put this probably better than any of the analysts and thought leaders. They said, for us, cloud is really more like NutraSweet, but my end users want Diet Coke. So what this means is they wanted a more comprehensive solution, rethinking work with cloud enablement. They didn't want to just think about the ingredients. They wanted to think about the outcomes. And this is very much in line with Cognizant's point of view on the world, that cloud versus not cloud is essentially the wrong debate to be having. Our take is that cloud technologies are an incredibly, immensely valuable, powerful set of tools, but they're a means, not an end for service delivery. So business requirements really need to be driving decisions about cloud versus not cloud, and decision makers need to be looking at what are the outputs of a new technology system. How are these new technologies and cloud-enabled solutions really helping to reform work, to rethink how are we doing things? So old business on new technologies is really a rough path to pick. And our take, when you look at some of the winners in the digital reality, that new business models on new technologies, that's where the value is unlocked. So what's next? So we have a couple of points here that we want to talk to you about in general on how do we rethink about embracing this shift. Our take is moving IT from rowing to steering is one of the most fundamental things that companies can start to do, to move out of just the day-to-day delivery, the day-to-day operations, to really thinking about how do we build ecosystems, how do we reimagine work, how do we use internal and external capability to really reform and rethink how we do business. Once you do that, now you're able to reimagine business at the process level. Now, I don't know how it ended up for this guy, but I'm sort of an optimist, so I'm going to think that it ended up okay. Although it was kind of a scary ride perhaps at the beginning, things ended up okay. So reimagining this business at the process level and finding ways to integrate new technologies in how work is being done, that's how companies can win at the shift point. Another recommendation we have for our own Cognizant customers is this is a challenge that we can start solving today. So starting your engines now, finding the friction points between process and technology, looking for proof points to show internal decision makers that this kind of thinking can unlock business value. It's not a boil the ocean exercise, but there are ways to find process and technology problems to solve in the near term by implementing social, mobile, analytics, cloud-enabled services. So whether you're a bank or a retail firm or an insurance company, finding those points of engagement and finding those friction areas and being able to reimagine the work and apply the new technologies, that's where companies are winning now in the near term. And finally, getting smart about partnerships for hybrid models. There are many companies that are trying different configurations of, we're going to do all this inside, or we're going to outsource everything and make it someone else's problem. The companies that are succeeding now in the early days of this shift are really unlocking value by creating partnerships for hybrid models. There's no single company that's going to be able to solve all of these problems. So the smart companies are getting together and they're thinking about how do we create an ecosystem of partnerships, leveraging our own internal delivery capability to solve these new problems. And finally, our take is that imagination here to win at this shift point, imagination may be in fact more critical than engineering. This is a wonderful quote from Mary Meeker, who said, "We're in an era where we are reimagining nearly everything, powered by new devices, plus connectivity, plus new user interfaces, plus the notion of a beautiful experience." That's where the value lies. And our take in helping our own customers embrace the opportunities around the future of work is that we're helping them reimagine how work is done and how that reimagination is accelerated and improved by creating a rich fabric of technologies to create a beautiful customer experience. And so one of the companies that's really helping make this happen, that's creating the foundational platform for unlocking this value, is of course Amazon. Now, so I've tried to kind of frame what we're seeing in the market from a Cognizant perspective. I'd like to now turn it over to Tom Sickle, who's a Senior Manager of Solution Architecture at Amazon Web Services, and they are in our opinion, one of the primary companies that's creating the fabric that's helping our customers unlock value and embrace the promises of the future of work. So, Tom?
Great, thanks, Paul, and I really appreciate your description of imagination and innovation, and actually leads really well into the discussion of how we got involved in cloud computing and our technology platform, because we really feel that we've built a technology platform that supports that vision in terms of innovation and imagination. And there are a few key pieces of that platform that we think help support that mission to get away from engineering and more towards innovation and imagination. And a big piece of that is rapid provisioning. And so we have a customer, NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, and their CTO, Tom Soderstrom, actually had a challenge for his team, and he said, I want you to replace my procurement screen with a provisioning screen and really change the idea of being able to rapidly deploy solutions. And another key piece and the value that we think is important for customers in this new model is low cost. So when you have a platform that's deployed at massive scale like we do with relatively homogeneous technology, and just to give you an idea of the scale, the quote that I've heard from our executives before is that every day we add enough new capacity at AWS to support all of Amazon.com's global infrastructure through the company's first 5 years. So as a $2.7 billion business in terms of annual revenue, we're adding that much infrastructure every day. So just to give you an idea of the scale. And what that does, it allows us to drive costs down for our customers. And so, if you're a SaaS customer and you've calculated the margins that you have to run your business, it's a nice surprise when you find out that you're offering got another 7% increase in margin growth because your technology partner was able to lower the price. And we've done that over 20 times in the last 5 years. We offer no upfront capital expense for companies, so it's a pay-as-you-go model. And this is another key component of a technology platform that supports innovation. And it's actually radically changed the way that the VC community, as well as the academic grants and funding community, is really viewing innovation and new technology. So you'll see that these organizations are offering AWS credits and they're investing in cloud technology as opposed to technology infrastructure. And lastly, paying for only what you use. When you're truly innovative, you'll have really successful ideas and they'll go big, but you'll also have unsuccessful ideas. And this model allows you to fail fast and move on so that you can continue on your quest for innovation. So in terms of how we remove the technology muck and the infrastructure to help support this, our platform is really aimed at reducing the noise that's caused by technology infrastructure. So rather than have customers start with the idea of acquiring racks and cabling and network switches, maybe a 1U load balancer or a whole bunch of 1U load balancers that plug into that, based on an estimate of demand and just a swag of what the demand might look like. Instead, you can just choose to use a service that we provide. So our Elastic Load Balancer is a service that does exactly that. It lets you load balance to a few machine images for a few customers coming in terms of traffic, or hundreds of thousands of customers coming in terms of traffic. It just automatically scales out and manages that change and that technology infrastructure so that you don't have to. Another example is the idea of assembling a collection of file servers for configuring backups and reserve network bandwidth based on a guess. And instead, you can really store your movies or your media for distribution in S3. And so S3 is another example of a service that's really designed for innovation and to remove that kind of technology muck. So if we look at the global infrastructure that we provide, AWS is expanding globally, and you'll see that we're operating in countries all over the world. We continue to expand as we do, and so as a customer, you can take advantage of that by being able to deploy your applications closer to customers in these various regions as we're growing. So here's an example of a web application that abides by these principles. And this is an interesting diagram because it really shows how we remove the technical muck from the application. So for example, it's configured so that it's highly available across physical data centers. It's auto-scaled and it's load balanced to scale out. It has all of its logs written to long-term storage. Its backups are automated. The database is synchronously replicated out of the box. The DNS is highly available and handles latency-based routing. And there's a full content distribution network for low latency media distribution. And these are capabilities that are built into our services. And so it really lets you focus on the application itself and the piece that the innovator really needs in terms of building creative capabilities. So this is a very natural fit for digital marketing agencies, but I want to be really clear that enterprise customers are also leveraging these same capabilities for a whole range of applications that include enterprise mobile and analytics. And we've also seen, we actually have a case study on if you go to our economics center at aws.amazon.com/economics, we have a whole set of case studies, and there are TCO, total cost of ownership, ROI studies that are done there. And one of them actually reports a 69% cost savings by running SAP's all-in-one technology on AWS. So this is certainly for enterprise customers as well. So we subscribe to this model for innovating, and in fact, it's one of the reasons that we've been able to innovate as quickly as we have. And so you'll see the pace of innovation for AWS itself by using these techniques has been really rapid. And so, every week we have executive briefings where we have customers come in and executives that ask us how we're able to move so quickly. And I think the answer is having the right structure in place and having the right technology platform to build on. So in terms of the AWS platform, one of the things that's interesting about our approach to this space is it is very evolutionary for customers because our starting point wasn't a set of middleware that you write applications to, but rather compute and storage that has APIs that you leverage for integrating services. And so in this model, you can bring anything that runs on Windows or Linux into the environment. You can use the same applications and development environments that you do on-prem, but in this case, you can choose to leverage or not leverage the services that are there. And I think one of the things that we're seeing as customers sort of move through the maturity model is that many more customers are starting to move away from abstractions around things like messaging and load balancing and backup and scaling so that they can support multiple cloud platforms. And they're moving much more towards embracing the services that we have because they're seeing the value in terms of cost and innovation and focusing much more on integration of their own services internally. So in terms of security and compliance, this is a really interesting topic because security is number one priority at AWS. Operational excellence is number two. But security is clearly number one priority. And when you run at the scale that we do, it allows us to staff a security team with some of the world's leading experts on cybersecurity. We also have some of the world's most security conscious and demanding customers on this front as well. And they push us around to make sure that we have the security controls and threat protection mechanisms in place that help protect their businesses as well. And what's interesting about this is you as the customer can come into the environment and take advantage of all of those same types of controls and all of that work that's been put in across the entire community. And I think that's an interesting piece about the value of security and compliance on infrastructure at running at scale like we are. So AWS is very much about offering flexibility and choice, another key component of our platform. So we support many operating systems, and we also support development environments and platforms. And so we see the same range of applications and an application portfolio components in our environment that you would see in a typical enterprise application portfolio. We've also invested a lot in licensing enterprise software on AWS. So we've not only worked for integration and making sure that we have the technical relationships and support relationships in place, but also making sure that we have license models that suit the cloud and our customer base. And so this is an area that we realize if you really want to be going after the enterprise and enterprise customers, we need to have all of the enterprise software out there, the rich enterprise software that's available in your own data centers to be able to run in the cloud. And so this is a major investment that we've made in terms of licensing enterprise software. And you'll see all of the major platform providers we have relationships with, and we've worked out licensing, integration, technology support issues for, and many different areas that our ISV team supports. Now, in terms of how we work with customers going forward and really focusing on enterprise problems, one of the key areas is connectivity. And so this is the area that Paul mentioned about hybrid and being a really important focus is really the leaders have focused on hybrid technologies. Now, enterprise applications have to reach back into existing systems, and they have to be well integrated with existing infrastructure. So things like identity systems have to be integrated in that environment. So we've invested a lot of our mind share on building virtualized networking capabilities and connectivity options for those so that you can link your data center into our data center with many different options that range from peering to VPN connectivity solutions. And this allows us to create these hybrid cloud architectures. And in this slide, this is actually a slide that we use for one of our guides for running SAP on AWS, and in this case, it's truly a hybrid cloud architecture. We have the GUI components up on the front end, but the whole back end running in AWS. So in the next frontier and the need for enterprise management, and I think that the next key piece is how do you take this idea of running hybrid cloud architecture and enterprise applications at scale in AWS. And now customers have built some really interesting applications. They're moving their infrastructure over and cloud enabling their infrastructure. But now you really look at getting to the next level. You're really looking at taking big pieces of the IT portfolio and moving it over to the cloud. In that case, I think there are some interesting challenges where enterprise management becomes extremely important. And so next up, we'll have Ramesh, who's going to walk through the Cloud360 offering, which helps address some of the issues, like things like automated governance and centralized cost control that are really key issues in terms of moving the enterprise portfolio over to the cloud. And so with that, I'll introduce Ramesh.
Thank you, Tom. Now that we have a great vision on to put enterprise applications onto the cloud, and we also have an excellent and time and tested platform from Amazon, let us try to understand how do we have a cloud management platform in terms of operationalizing these enterprise applications, and how do we enforce a service optimization from a service governance, federation, orchestration standpoint, and how do we put a service management tier from a cataloging and financial management, and also an access management tier from getting a programmable interface, APIs, and then ultimately the on-demand self-service portal that you could get into. And also, let's talk a little bit about how do we get external management adapters for these enterprise applications when they are on the cloud. Okay, and let's try to understand briefly with a cloud management platform, and when you have your applications on the cloud, how do you look at the problems that may be getting resolved, which were always challenges in the traditional management and the traditional infrastructures. So starting with the long IT rollout cycles of enterprise applications, what used to take about weeks or months. I'm not talking about the procurement of the infrastructure rather than just talking about application deployment. How do you convert these as catalogs and templates, and how you would be able to deploy these applications onto the cloud. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. How do we create application profiles, and then so that you would actually be able to get on-demand rollout of applications. And moving from a people-based management and silo-based management as compute, storage, network, etc., how do you actually get into auto-remediation of incidents, which translates into high availability for these applications at the application level, not just at the infrastructure level, but you need to make sure that if your application is serving web services and it needs to respond in 85 milliseconds for every request, how do you ensure that that is always the case at any time of the day or day of the month? Okay, so let's also get into that and then see how a cloud management platform could help with that. And another problem that we could look at resolving from a traditional management standpoint is the error-prone deployment. Say, if you have a dev and test team with about 100 people or 24 people, you know that most of the times they end up with configuration settings, changing the Java paths or installation paths or variables or versions. And how do you ensure that those problems do not exist in the cloud mode? And ultimately, the underutilized capacity. Most of us know that we always had equipment in the data centers which was not getting utilized, and average utilizations range in about 2% points. And the visibility is the key question. How do you get a visibility by application, by user, by department, etc.? And how can we help in solving that problem with Cloud360 is what we'll address that in terms of getting a metering done and getting a cost control done. And let us also visualize a new use case where most of the CIOs are getting challenged with the emergence of the cloud services that are coming up. We all know that services are there for compute, storage, network, for SaaS, BPaaS, etc. And how do we make sure that our enterprise users will continue to get benefits as and when it is required, still maintain the governance and compliance for an enterprise organization? If you give away those two aspects, the end users will anyway be able to get these cloud services on their own and put the enterprise data on the cloud, which would result into a breach of governance aspect from an enterprise organization standpoint. But yet, how do you give an agility to the end user? Is that the Cloud360 can help in converting these cloud services into something as easy as QR barcodes that can be scanned by mobile phones and deliver to the organization, and the service managers or the IT teams can essentially help in translating the business needs into the service needs and serve the demand. At the same time, they would have control on the governance and compliance and be able to deliver services on an SLA basis to the business users. If you see on the bottom row on this slide, you see the business benefits. The key advantage is that the business users get a higher business agility, and the IT service team gets a lower cost of operations. And the numbers that are here are actually time and tested with our own customer case studies and validated by the research groups. And the executive owners or the CIOs get a future-proofing of the cloud platforms from an enterprise delivery standpoint. I'm moving on to the next slide, where I want to talk about the use case scenarios. Now that you understand what are the benefits, the business benefits from Cloud360, let us try to understand how or where do you put it. Okay, so the number one use case is on-demand and self-serve IT, with the underlying platform being Amazon, and then what we introduce is a service management layer. End users can log in to the portal or use the web services or APIs, command line, etc. And then they would be able to consume or deliver the applications or infrastructure. Number two use case is automation and governance, and continuing on to machine analytics and optimization. And then monitoring and SLA management. So essentially, rather than monitoring infrastructure on a piecemeal approach, individual component approach, you would be able to monitor at an application level to see whether the application is healthy or not, whether the application is under SLA or out of SLA. And then the last use case is the integrated storage management. You would be able to put in a lifecycle management policy, save on cost, utilize the low-cost infrastructures like Glacier from Amazon to ensure that you do save on cost and yet get the most of the cloud for your infrastructure. And all these 5 use cases are addressed at the application level and coupled with policies. And policies is where we are extremely strong. We have multiple intellectual properties, and I'll walk through examples of these policies in the coming slides. And all these things, the benefits are offered on the best of the breed or the industry best platforms. And let me spend a little time on how a traditional application management was done in a normal enterprise IT. You know that there were always these infrastructures, either infrastructure as a service or dedicated or virtual private, etc. People used to have an elaborate or an extensive set of service management for every application layer. So for each application on each infrastructure, you used to have a set of tools that used to manage these applications. And you can consider or compare it with the slide of the information that Paul Rohrig was earlier presenting. The traditional organizations were always working in this type of a mode without much of a flexibility to the end users and how the requests were coming in or how the business growth was happening. And if you look at the new mode of operations, how you could be operating to address the SMAC needs or the newer business needs or the expanding growth, is that you abstract out the service management layer, which essentially helps you in abstracting a service deployment, the way applications are deployed on the cloud or applications can be provisioned on demand, coupled with policies and automation, and coupled with high availability for auto remediation to make sure that if in case there are any incidents, infrastructure problems or application issues or the user load issues, any of these monitored parameter changes at the entire application stack, you would be able to auto remediate those incidents in terms of sizing, scaling, and auto correcting some of the infrastructure level complexities, or maybe making any of the application configuration changes as well. and then getting into machine analytics or the infrastructure analytics, and how do you optimize, how do you save on cost if in case you're not utilizing it right, or if in case some of the virtual machines or the applications are not in use, how do you set up automated policies to shut down the environments or scale down the environments, etc. Measured services in terms of being able to measure the infrastructure utilization by user, by application, by business unit, or with any custom defined tags. You would be able to define the tags and then look at the infrastructure utilization. Integration is another key piece that we bring onto the table as part of Cloud360 or the portal and the platform that we have, to essentially ensure that none of our customers is forced to discard their previous IT investments. We of course acknowledge that every customer would have made investments in various IT tools, starting from ticketing or application performance or management or process or service management or any other internal tools. Those tools would have to continue so that the cloud onboarding or enablement is as non-disruptive as possible. We help with that aspect specifically. We have plugins that we bring to the table to connect with the existing IT tools as part of the cloud enablement. We abstract out the service management so that the applications do not know about the underlying infrastructure changes. We try to minimize the service management layers on the top. And of course, future proofing of this entire service management so that if in case there are any more cloud platforms that need to be added in the future, we will be able to add that pretty easily. And consider that we just don't stop there. We don't stop at the service management layer. We actually extend into the operations and governance of these enterprise applications to make sure that the new type of applications that are coming onto the cloud are not expected to be similar to the long tail applications, which is what was the traditional IT used to be expecting. Most of the infrastructure is expected to remain the same or the similar capacity or the period of the life of the application. But in this new mode, new age, where the demands are highly fluctuating, if the business grows, the infrastructure has to scale. Rather than spending an infinite amount of time on the capacity planning, you would be able to define it as a scalable application, define the policies when it needs to scale up, and then not just the service management platform. What I am saying is that it needs to be customized as part of the operations as well. Say when there is an operations management, and if they're expected to see only 20 virtual machines, if they suddenly see 30 virtual machines, they should not get confused why they got created, why these additional virtual machines got created. Or if in case the 30 goes down to 20, they need to be able to differentiate whether these virtual machines went down for a purpose or was there an incident at the data center. All that is built into this portal, and then gives an extensive set of visibility to the managed services team. And of course, the users can log in, and they would also be able to consume the infrastructure at any given point. And Cognizant also brings to the table of what we call as a 24/7 follow-the-sun model of managed services, which is across 12 global operation centers across the globe. And as the sun follows, the support centers seamlessly follow the sun, and the call transfers from one center to another center, etc. Now let us look at the features of the cloud management platform. Until now we talked about the business benefits, the use case scenarios of what cloud management is about in terms of service management and operations. And I'm spending a little time on what are the features that we have to make all these things happen. The features that we have are categorized broadly into two categories. The first set of features drive up the business agility. These features are about one-click provisioning or zero-touch provisioning. Essentially, if you have an entire application, somebody who is authorized to see this application when they log in, they see the catalog. When they click on it, they get to see the total cost of the application per hour, how much it is going to cost. And then when they launch it, it may take a few minutes to get it launched, and it gets pushed to the user. He gets an email on how to access this application. If it's a web application, they may get a web link on how and where to access it, all under the governance and compliance needs norms of the enterprise. It's not just about spinning up a few virtual machines. Consider that the entire operations is automated here. and then the self-service portal that we have along with the web APIs, REST APIs, and scripting interfaces, catalogs and workflows that convert most of the day-to-day activities into a templatized form, and then plugins and integration, which I explained earlier, on how do we bring to the table of a drag and drop type of a plugin to connect to your existing IT investments. And then there is a second set of features which drive up the operational efficiencies, also drives down the total cost of operations. About policies, automation policies, and flexible operations, application awareness at the entire application stack of the Cloud360 application. So if in case we are managing an e-commerce application, or the previous slide that Tom showed about www.example.com, we are going to manage the entire stack of that, okay, all the way from application into the infrastructure. Consumption metering to be able to measure and meter the infrastructure utilization. We do collect the statistics once every minute. We store them on a big data in Cloud360, and then which you can use it for drawing trending graphs and charts. Analytics and right sizing, based on the data that we collect, how do we actually help you save cost? And in some cases, we have helped customers save as much as 35 to 40% of the infrastructure cost as well. Let me spend a little bit on how do we actually do the automation and how do we help enterprises in moving into IT as a service model. If you consider a line of business user who is deploying an application, rather than creating a set of virtual machines immediately, what we try to do is to go through let the request go through a set of provisioning policies, which looks at the authorizations, enablements, budgets, available quota, considerations, Active Directory permissions, etc. And then execute those policies, and then pick up the instance profiles and how the application has to be deployed from an application profile. And only then we pick up the actual location, infrastructure location, where it needs to be deployed. Should it be on Amazon or any dedicated infrastructure? Is it a cloud-busted application, etc.? And then we position it appropriately. Consider second use case scenario where there is an enterprise application running in a production environment, and it gets into a fault or a problem. Rather than trying to create a ticket in the ticket management system or alerting an L0 team, what we try to do is to try to fix the problem automatically based on a set of conditions. It could be at a virtual machine, or maybe a set of virtual machines, or the entire deployment as well. And try to fix it, or maybe to change the location of the application, region of the application. And then again, we go through the same policies, and if it involves scaling up, scaling down, we try to do that. And if in case we cannot handle the monitoring policy, we then create it as a ticket into the global operations. It can be Cognizant's own ticketing system, or it can be your own ticketing system. And we have plugins that are built for most common ticketing systems. So it automatically shows up there with a set of past history of this application and a set of past history details of that virtual infrastructure as well, to tell that this is what is likely to be the reason, and these are the things that we already attempted and we could not fix the problem, and now it's up to you to look at the problem. And let's consider the use case scenarios from a user standpoint. Say how each and every user in any enterprise organization, whether it's a developer or a tester or an administrator, how they get benefits from Cloud360. The top left picture, I'm going in the clockwise direction, is if a developer or a tester is using Cloud360, they will be able to get on-demand and self-service IT mode of agile business operations, so that they would be able to do things on their own without going through a procurement process and a request. And yet understand that all the operational procedures, approvals can still be done with Cloud360, except that the people are doing or initiating these requests on their own, and as long as they're authorized to do things, it can be done instantly. And consider from an administration standpoint how an administrator could get benefited with automation and governance, being able to scale up or scale down any of the enterprise applications on demand. I'm going the clockwise direction, bottom right. As an executive, somebody would be able to get the metering and analytics data and be able to look at the application level resource utilization and optimize it if in case it is required. If it translates into cost savings, yeah, well and good. Yeah, we help them do that. And the picture on the bottom left is if I'm viewing the business user as a business analyst or a development manager or a testing manager, they would be able to specify a set of business policies on how and where these applications are to be deployed and then provisioned, how frequently they need to be backed up, how frequently they need to be snapshotted, what are the governance policies around that. And all these policies are done outside of the applications at the infrastructure level or at an application level. And something that is as simple to be set up as in English for a business user, they would be able to specify it. And let me get into a little bit of details on this English-like policies and automation language that we have. So let me just take an example where a development manager wants to set a policy that if the consumption in the last 24 hours is 50% more than the last 30-day average, he may want to shut down he may want to not allow any more provisioning requests, and he may also want to know the top 5 business users. If you see the syntax here, it is as easy as 4 lines. Okay, so somebody can just put in the business policy as a business owner of an application or a deployment and tell that if this is the case, this is what that needs to happen. And we execute it based on the data collection that we do once every minute or whenever the provisioning requests happen. Or if an administrator wants to set a business policy, I'm talking about the policy on the top left of the slide. Say there is an environment that needs to be scaled up. If 70% of the VMs in the web service pool and the production are in the critical state, yeah, you get to specify a policy and then it automatically happens. Or if you want to specify a snapshotting based policy that states that snapshots needs to happen once every, say, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but retain only the top snapshots, only for this particular volume of AWS. You specify the volume and then you specify the max snapshot count and you just execute it as an operation, retain EBS snapshots, we just execute it. Consider that all these words are coming from a dictionary and then we expand the dictionary into a lexical analyzer. We execute these policies at every stage of Cloud360 based on the data collection, based on the provisioning, based on the placement, based on the monitoring, etc. Moving on to the next slide. So until now I talked about Cloud360 as a platform and a product that we offer. And what we also bring to the table as Cognizant is the overall approach of helping customers to transform, integrate, and manage, to help transform the enterprise applications into the cloud mode. If in case there is any reconfiguration, re-engineering, etc. that is required on these applications, we do that as part of this. We integrate your environment with the cloud environment to, again, with the core idea that we do not want you to have a disruptive transformation to onboard AWS or the cloud environment. And then we provide management as part of the tool that could be consumed on a self-serve or as part of providing the managed services with an SLA-based governance or commitments at an application level, whether it's a 99 or a 999 at an application level, we do that. And let me spend a little bit of time on the customer case studies. So one of our current customers is a top 3 UK universities. They thought they would start offering a new course that teaches English online. And their initial product management predictions were that they would get about 200 paid subscribers in about 6 months. And consider that each subscriber brings in a revenue of $40 per month. But when the application went live, it became a super success, and they had about 12,000 paid users in less than 6 weeks. And what did they do, or what did we do as part of our operations? Literally nothing. Okay. Consider that Cloud360 was there, and then the application SLAs in terms of page load times, number of users were all getting monitored, and we were able to scale up, scale down the infrastructure. And the application was healthy, and the product management was very happy when they saw the results and revenue collections at the end of 6 weeks. It's an example of a very highly elastic application. Now, let me switch gears a little bit and talk about how we helped in a dev and test environment, internal, which does not have to be massively scalable. But the key benefit here is that on a traditional environment, on an on-prem infrastructure, where the physical infrastructure is already there, okay, the application deployment used to take about 6 months. Okay, that was the actual number, and we brought it down to 39 minutes. Okay, and that again was at a large U.S. insurance company in U.S. And the entire customer organization was very surprised to see these results on how it was done, and we could not have done it without a vision of cloud enablement to the customer and without a great platform like AWS and without a management solution like Cloud360. And now let me spend a little bit of time on the last case study. This is a large U.S. airline, and what we did over here is cloud bursting of some application components running on-prem infrastructure and most of the other things running on AWS. The key business advantage is on-demand enablement and the launching of environments whenever the business wants, essentially giving them the agility to roll out new applications. And most of these applications are customer facing. They are facing the ticketing systems, seating assignments, and then flight schedules, delays, etc. And all this while saving on the administration cost and putting in the best of the breed platform support from AWS. And the key benefits that the customer saw was the zero-touch environment and managed services and a consumption-based pricing model, and service profiles, integration elements to their existing infrastructure, because they do have most of the IT ecosystem tools. Okay, we have retained all those investments, and we made sure that we have the plugins that are operational for this production environment, and policies and flexible operations, what we brought to the table. Let me stop my presentation with a thank you note to all of you. Thank you for taking time to attend. I'm going to hand over the mic to Tom to go through any set of questions, but appreciate the interest in understanding the vision of the cloud and the platforms, technologies, and the management stack that you would need to get your enterprise applications. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Ramesh. We've got a few questions that we got in here, and before at the end, I'll make sure that we leave everyone with contact details for the speakers so they can follow up outside of this webinar. But Paul, one question that's come in is we're struggling to make the leap between the promise of the cloud and the real-world business value. How do solutions like these strengthen the overall business case?
Yeah, that's a great question, because on Cognizant, so one of the things we hear a lot from at Cognizant from our customers and people that are interested in what do we mean when we say the future of work? What do we mean by all of that? And where things get real and begin to kind of make sense to decision makers is when you rotate the conversation a little bit away from the cloud is a great thing to here's work that the enterprise is doing, and here's how these kinds of solutions can help you do that work better. And by better, it requires the decision maker to come up with what are the real things that are guiding these decisions, right? So if you're for example, if you're a bank and you want to worry about post-trade processing or middle office work, if you're a telecommunications firm, what is it about order management? If you're life sciences, it's pharmacovigilance or clinical drug trial processes. Orienting the technology to work is where all of this gets a lot more impactful and significant for a customer. From our perspective, it's customers, and so customers who kind of make that connection from we're doing this kind of work, here's what it costs, here are the risks involved, here's what could be done better, and here are some new technologies that will help us rethink how we do pharmacovigilance or rethink the customer experience in a retail store. And then there are the underlying technologies that help us manage that and control that and have transparency around that. That becomes a much more rich business-oriented conversation. So where Amazon and Cloud360 come together for clients is where that narrative plays out, where I'm focusing on work. I understand that cloud technologies are pretty cool, but I don't know how it applies to me until I apply it to a critical business process. So that de-risks the interaction. It makes it a much more elegant and efficient discussion around value versus a really cool technology. And that opens up a lot of minds. It gets the business owners involved. It de-risks the notion of, oh, we're going to take all of this really critical information and put it someplace that we might not want it. All of that simply gets quieted down. So by focusing on the work process, all of this stuff makes a lot more sense for business decision makers. And then the technologies and Cloud360 and Amazon's foundational technology platform, all of that makes a lot more sense for a business decision maker who's just trying to get work done better.
Yeah, and that helps them qualify their business case. Tom, a couple questions have come up on the security side from an Amazon perspective, particularly around the payment card industry or PCI compliance. Can you address a little bit about how AWS handles PCI?
Yeah, I sure can. So, I saw a couple of questions pop up about security in general. And, I think a lot of the security controls that you put in place in the cloud environment are very similar to the controls that you put in place in your own environment. There are things like firewall solutions. There are things like IDS solutions that you continue to run in the cloud environment. Well, one of the key pieces, though, is on the compliance side, and so PCI is a great example of that, and there are many others also. But PCI, in that case, we've actually went and did a PCI DSS Level 1 audit of our own infrastructure so that we have controls in place for the areas that are really within our responsibility. So the pieces of core infrastructure that customers don't have access to, for example. And what that allows us to do is have customers build their applications for credit card processing on top of our infrastructure and then leverage the controls that we provide underneath. And so that's the compliance model. And it's not only with PCI, it's with other compliance models like FISMA and others where you really have this layered approach where you have the controls that are in your responsibility as the customer or partner that's running this application versus the cloud infrastructure provider who has access for those controls. And so what we'll typically do is have your PCI QSA auditor contact our PCI QSA auditor and work out the matrix of controls that are available there. But I think cloud can actually help in that case in terms of giving a jump start in terms of having controls in place to help meet the requirements of PCI.
Excellent, Tom. Excellent. And Ramesh, one more question here. Someone asked about how you offer Cloud360 and whether is it a license model? Is it a managed service offering? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Okay, sure. So Cloud360, we actually price by consumption. Similarly, how AWS prices by consumption of the virtual infrastructure, we follow the same model. And then we also in terms of the usage as such, we offer it in terms of both license model, something that can be installed on-prem, or something that Cognizant manages as a SaaS model as well. So it could be a multi-tenant or it could be a single tenant unlicensed. And we do offer services on top of Cloud360 to provide managed services at the application layer, which includes operating systems, infrastructure, and the technology stack.
Great. Well, with that, I think we're at the end of the webcast. Appreciate everyone attending today and just want to remind everyone that the materials are available on AWS SlideShare channel as well as the AWS YouTube channel. This has been recorded, and at the Twitter #CloudManagement, we will provide a link where you can go and see it again. Thank you very much for attending.